25 2 notes. The first theorem is actually a theorem we talked about. I accidentally talked about it too early. I talked about this theorem in activity 24, but it's actually a 25 theorem, which is why we haven't had any problems regarding it yet till now. Fill in the blank. Opposite angles in an inscribed quadrilateral are supplementary. Opposite angles in an inscribed quadrilateral are supplementary. The easiest way to draw a quadrilateral, a four-sided figure in a circle, is to start with 4 points. Anywhere you want. They can be next to each other, equally spaced, unequally spaced. I don't care. Draw 4 points somewhere. And then connect 1 point to the next point. That is an inscribed, because it's sort of inscribed quadrilateral, 4 sides. And here's what the theorem says. Opposite angles in this are going to be supplementary. So let's label these A, B, C, D. Chupe, tell me 2 angles that are opposites. Huh? A is next to... Yeah, A is next to B and D, so its opposite has to be C. Connor, what does supplementary mean?
Equals 180.
Add to 180. So the opposite angles, so angle A and angle C, those are opposites. They are supplementary. They add to 180. Does angle A equal 180 and angle C equal 180? No, together they add to the 180. Caitlin, give me another pair of opposite angles. Yes, so they are opposites, then B and measure of angle D, add to 180. In the next box, I would like you to draw a circle, picking up most of the box. And I want you to draw a central angle. If you forget what a central angle is, flip to yesterday's notes. It's the very first thing that we drew or wrote. Copy what you drew yesterday. A central angle is an angle whose vertex is at the center. And here's the center. I'm going to draw this angle today. There are an infinite number of correct central angles you could draw. Please put an X in the angle. So my angle is right here. Put an X where your angle is. What do we know about the angle? The angle equals the arc. If the angle is 10, the arc is 10. If the angle is 50, the arc is 50. The angle equals the arc. Sometimes instead of the word angle, I just draw the angle symbol. Angle. That is yesterday's lesson. Today we're going to have what's called inscribed angles. So draw a circle. I'll tell you what these look like. This time, instead of the angle being at the center, it's going to be on the circle. So pick any point on the circle you want. I'm going to go with right here. And draw an angle. So you could draw this. You could draw this. So many things you could draw. Basically, just need two rays going out. Put an X where your angle is. We're going to have a different formula because we have a different type of angle. So write down angle equals half the arc. I like to highlight the arc so I know exactly what I'm talking about. There's lots of arcs in the picture. I don't want either of these arcs, so I'm going to erase that. I want the arc formed by that angle. Okay, let's look at this first question. Put a dot where the angle vertex is. It's not at the center. It's on the circle. So since this is an inscribed angle, I'm going to write my formula. Angle equals half the arc. If your vertex is on the circle, you will write this formula every time. If your vertex is at the center, you will write this formula every time. Today's lesson is this. So pretty much all the pictures are going to be with your vertex there. But when we get to a quiz, there's going to be a variety of questions. So that's how you know what formula to pick. You just look at the vertex. So let's go ahead and fill it in. The angle, I don't know it, so I'm going to call it angle A. Half. Let's look at the arc. The arc it makes is 50. We don't need a calculator for that. Half of 50 is 25. Every problem is going to start like this. You're going to have a formula. You're going to fill in what you know of the formula. And you're going to do algebra. Is this a question I would allow you to not show work on? Yeah. If this was a homework question or a quiz question and you put 25 with no work, I'd be fine with that. But we know there's going to be more difficult problems. So getting in the habit of writing the formula, filling it in, doing some algebra is the same process we're going to do for easy problems and hard problems. So that's why I show my work every time. Next question. Fill in where the vertex is. It's on the circle. The formula, if the vertex is on the circle, the angle is half the arc. The angle, there's a number there. It's 40. If there's a number, you'll fill it in. Half the arc. I don't know the arc. I could leave it as arc. I could call it X if I want. I'm just going to call it arc BC because that's its actual name. I don't care what you call it. Say that again? Oh, that is if the vertex is on the circle, then it would be. Who remembers the best way to get rid of this half here? You could. Ash, what do you think?
Yeah, we do 2 over 1.
Yeah, you multiply by the reciprocal. So it says times a half. Here's why we usually don't divide, because if I divide, that's a lot of division, confusion, numbers vertically. So we normally don't divide by fraction because that creates sort of some confusion. So instead of dividing by fractions, we usually multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2 or 2 over 1. You don't really always write the over 1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. 2 times 40 is 80. The 2.5 canceled. So I'm left with my answer, which is find the arc BC. Again, you wouldn't have to show work on this, but this is the same work you would show when we get to a difficult question. Number 3, put a dot where the vertex is and write the angle that goes, write the formula that goes with that. If the vertex is on the circle, then we're writing this formula. Angle is half arc. Let's fill it in. The angle is listed as 31x plus 3. The arc is listed as 192. The rest is up to you. The rest is just some algebra. How are you going to figure out x? What you might do is you might just figure out what half of 192 is. I cannot help you with fractions on your calculator on a quiz, so practice ahead of time. I think we've done this plenty of times, but if you want to type a half, I would type parentheses, 1, the divided by key, 2. Let's practice. So we've got it down. Anybody else feel free to come look at your calculator? Okay, 1 second. I'll come look at it. Keep going. Keep getting x by itself. Did you multiply both sides by 2? Did you remember to multiply this whole thing by 2 or just this? Common mistake.
I was gonna say you have to do the 5 minus 3.
Oh, I didn't subtract 3. Thanks. You still got 3 for your answer? If you decided up here to multiply by 2 to get rid of the half, that's fine. But we have to multiply the whole thing by 2. If there's ever a plus or minus, put in parentheses. I didn't go that route. I just, because these are both numbers, I figured out the number. Questions on that one? Okay, number 4. This looks different. There's not just one angle. There is a 4-sided figure there. We have a theorem about a 4-sided figure. Read that theorem and see if you can come up with the measure of angle G and the measure of angle M. That's like how we practice it in class. All right, our theorem says opposite angles in the inscribed quadrilateral are supplementary. So here's an angle And here's the opposite one. So 119 and the measure of angle G are supplementary. They add to 180. Hoping you got this on your own. Subtract 119 from each side. Then I apply the theorem one more time, which says opposite angles are supplementary. So those two have to add to 180. Measure of angle F plus 65, add to 180. Subtract 65. I would not require work for those. I would definitely require work for number 3. Questions? Flip it over. Occasionally you will see inscribed angles that look like this. Normally our inscribed angles, both rays are somewhere in the circle, but sometimes the ray goes out, and that is okay. It's still inscribed. It's still the same formula. So let's highlight the vertex on the circle, and let's write our formula. These are formulas I won't give you for a quiz. Let's fill in what we know. The angle is X. The arc is 102. Think about that math without a calculator. Half of 102. I said think about it. I didn't say get your calculator. Half of 102. So half of 100 is 50. And you got 2 extra, so 51. I don't care if you use a calculator, but sometimes we just forget to think first. This one happens to have a second variable. We've just found X. Think of an idea of how you could find Y and write it down. Aubrey, do you have an idea for Y? Not yet. Connor?
You did 360 minus 102.
There you go. Here is a full 360. And the arc that I want is not 360. It's 360. Get rid of 102 of it. Leaves me with exactly what I want. 360 minus 100 is 260. Subtract 2 more, 258. All right. I'm going to give you some time to think through 6. It's not an easy one, but I think you might be able to come up with it. At least label some number if you can't find a final answer. Raise your hand if you've come up with what you think is a final answer for 6. 1, 2, 3. So maybe you start right here. Maybe you say, all right, I've got an inscribed angle. The formula for that, angle equals half the arc. The angle is 6x plus 3. The arc. I can't just pick 58 or 140. I have to pick the arc that makes the angle. That is the arc that I have to pick. And I don't know that number. If I don't know, can I just put X? Definitely not. X has already been chosen in this picture. I cannot pick X. I could pick Y, but then I'm dealing with 2 different variables, and that's not going to be good. So there must be some other way to do this. Some other way. Yeah.
Could you do 360 minus 140 minus?
You got it. A full circle is here. I don't want the full circle. I would like to get rid of 58 of that circle. And I'd like to get rid of 140 of that circle. And that would leave me with what I want. Very good. What'd you get for that?
162.
So we did find this arc of 162. Now the time earlier when I multiplied by 2, that was when I had a variable here, but because I have a number here, I'm just going to find what that number is. Half of 162. And we've got some basic algebra left. Maybe you started by finding that 162 first and you didn't start with the formula. That's fine. Just start somewhere and try to get something written down. All right, go ahead and start 7 on your own. I don't care if you don't have a final answer. I care if your paper is completely blank. I'm going to start by looking at the angle I have, which is inscribed. The formula is angle is half the arc. So my angle is 44. That's half of the arc. Since there's no number there, I'm going to multiply by 2. So 88 is the arc formed by this angle. So this 88. That's a good start. Then what did we notice? Or did you notice anything after that? You got that far? Okay. Look for like 180s, 360s. So do we have any diameters here, any semicircles? No. Do we have parts of a full 360? Yeah. Look at your whole circle. 360 is made up of 130 or 131 and 88 and 18x minus 3. I can add all three outside arcs to 360. You would have to show work for that one. When you get to your homework tonight, we have one left, but when you get to your homework, same idea. If you don't get the final answer, I'm okay with that. You can still get a 10 if you don't get the final answer. Just put in some numbers that you can figure out, get on your way to the answer, and that will be good enough. Because there's some hard ones, but I think if you just start somewhere, you might be able to get farther than you think. All right. Before we do the last one, I want to show you something. You don't need to draw this. Let's say I have this angle, and we'll say this arc is 100. I know that the angle is half of the arc. So what's half of 100? 50. Well, if I draw, say, this angle, this angle is half of the arc. Okay, they make the same arc. So this angle is half of 100, which is 50. If you ever have two inscribed angles and they both form, there's the arc from the blue and here's the arc from the black angle. They form the same thing. They're both going to be half of the same number, which is always going to be the same. This is what is happening in your last question. So if you take a look at 18 here, 18 is this blue angle creating this blue arc. The formula is angle equals half the arc. The angle is 18. Let's multiply by 2. Do we know 18 times 2 without a calculator? 36. The arc is 36. Let's say I want this angle. Let's look at what arc it makes. It makes the same arc. The formula for the angle, same. Angle equals half the arc. So the angle X is half of the arc. Half of 36 is 18. In the future, I do not actually want you to show any work. I want you to recognize both angles share the same arc. Both angles must be the same. If you have to do the work and show the numbers, you can, but you should recognize that they will be the same. That's it. We only have a few minutes left. You can be on your phone, remember?